President Donald Trump addressed reporters today in the White House press briefing room, announcing the deployment of federal law enforcement agents to Washington, D.C. to strengthen the local police presence. Flanked by Attorney General Pam Bondi and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, the president framed the move as a necessary step to maintain public safety amid rising tensions in the Capitol. From our perspective, this signals a deliberate escalation of federal involvement in local security matters, one that could spark debate over the balance of federal and municipal authority. Supporters of the decision may argue it shows decisive leadership in the face of unrest, while critics are likely to see it as federal overreach that could inflame rather than ease the situation. The optics of having both the nation's top legal officer and the defense secretary at his side underscore the administration's intent to project strength and unity, but it also raises questions about how this blending of law enforcement and military presence will be received on the streets of Washington. President Donald Trump spoke to reporters in the White House press briefing room today, joined by Attorney General Pam Bondi and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, to announce the deployment of federal law enforcement agents to Washington, D.C., aimed at reinforcing the local police force. From our perspective, this move is more than just a law and order measure. It's a calculated show of federal authority in the heart of the nation's capital. With both the Attorney General and the Defense Secretary at his side, the administration is sending a strong signal that it is ready to use every tool at its disposal. Supporters may see this as a proactive step to restore calm, while opponents are likely to argue it blurs the line between civilian policing and military influence. Either way, the optics are as deliberate as the policy itself. President Donald Trump delivered remarks today in the James S. Brady Press Briefing Room at the White House, announcing he will exercise his authority to place the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under federal control to assist in crime prevention across the Capitol. From our perspective, this is one of the most direct assertions of federal power over a local police force in recent history. The administration is framing it as a bold move to combat crime, but it's a decision that could ignite constitutional debates over states' and cities' rights. Supporters will likely see it as decisive action to restore safety, while critics may view it as an unprecedented federal takeover of local policing. In either case, the message from the White House is unmistakable. Washington, D.C. is now under tighter federal watch. President Donald Trump presented crime statistics during a press conference in the James S. Brady Press Briefing Room at the White House, using the data to underscore what he described as an urgent need for stronger law enforcement measures in Washington, D.C. From our perspective, the choice to spotlight these numbers was as much about shaping public perception as it was about policy. By framing the statistics as evidence of a crisis, the administration is building its case for expanded federal intervention. Supporters will likely see this as proof-based leadership, while critics may question whether the data tells the full story. Either way, the message was clear. The White House wants Americans to see the numbers and feel the urgency. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth spoke alongside President Donald Trump during a White House press conference focused on crime in Washington, D.C., in the Brady Press Briefing Room on August 11, 2025. From our perspective, Hegseth's presence signals a deliberate blurring of the lines between national defense and domestic policing. By bringing the defense secretary into a conversation traditionally led by law enforcement, the administration is emphasizing a security-first, almost militarized approach to the city's crime problem. Supporters may welcome the added muscle, while critics could see it as an unnecessary show of force in a civilian matter. The optics suggest that the White House wants the public to view urban crime not just as a policing challenge, but as a national security concern. President Donald Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth looked on as Attorney General Pam Bondi addressed the press in the White House briefing room on August 11, 2025, announcing plans to deploy federal law enforcement agents to Washington, D.C. to strengthen the local police presence. From our perspective, Bondi's role at the podium underscores that this move is being framed not only as a public safety measure, but as a matter of federal legal authority. With both the President and the Defense Secretary visibly backing her remarks, the optics project a united front blending executive, legal, and defense power. Supporters may interpret this as decisive, coordinated leadership, while critics are likely to see it as a calculated expansion of federal reach into local policing. The message from the administration was unmistakable. Washington's security is now a top-level federal priority. FBI Director Kash Patel, joined by U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, spoke during a White House news conference led by President Donald Trump on August 11, 2025, addressing crime in Washington, D.C. from the Brady Press Briefing Room. From our perspective, having both the FBI Director and the Defense Secretary on stage sends a clear message. The administration is treating the city's crime issue as both a federal law enforcement priority and a national security matter. This pairing reinforces the idea of a coordinated, multi-agency approach, but it also blurs traditional boundaries between civilian policing, intelligence operations, and military oversight. Supporters will view it as an all-hands-on-deck response, while critics may see it as an unnecessary concentration of federal power in a local matter. The symbolism was unmistakable. This is not just about crime statistics, it's about control. President Donald Trump, flanked by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and Attorney General Pam Bondi, spoke during a White House news conference on August 11, 2025, addressing crime in Washington, D.C. from the Brady Press Briefing Room. From our perspective, the lineup at the podium was no accident. It projected the full weight of federal power, combining the nation's top executive, its chief legal officer, and its highest defense official in a single message. This was not just a crime briefing, it was a statement of authority, signaling that the administration sees Washington's safety as a matter of federal responsibility and national security. Supporters may applaud the unity and decisive tone, while critics could see it as symbolic of overreach and the militarization of domestic law enforcement. Either way, the image spoke as loudly as the words. President Donald Trump, Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth looked on as U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia Jeanine Ferris Pirro addressed the press on August 11, 2025, in the White House briefing room, announcing the deployment of federal law enforcement agents to Washington, D.C. to reinforce the local police presence. From our perspective, Pirro's appearance at the podium added a prosecutorial edge to the administration's message, underscoring that this initiative is not only about putting more boots on the ground, but also about intensifying the legal pursuit of offenders. With Trump, Burgum, and Hegseth standing behind her, the moment conveyed a united front blending executive leadership, territorial oversight, and defense authority. Supporters may interpret this as a decisive, all-tiered federal push for security, while critics could see it as a dramatic expansion of centralized control over a city's policing.